Hello and welcome to this video where we are going to discuss a little bit about how to write chapter 3, the methodology. So I think this will probably be one of the largest or biggest chapters in your assignment and probably in your dissertation because there are many things to discuss. So I will start with the instructions and then I will also show you a group assignment that maybe I can give you some ideas. So we start with the first section of the methodology chapter, which is the research philosophy. And for this, it's very important that you have watched and that you understand the lecture number 2. It was the first lecture that we had, the pre-recorded lecture, because in there we discuss very specific concepts like ontology, epistemology. So it's important that you discuss this. In 3.1, you need to kind of explain all of this for your project, but the difficult part maybe is that you don't really have a lot of freedom to discuss because we already gave you everything. We already gave you the topic, the method, everything. So you don't really have to choose many things in here. It is now just about reporting and then justifying in a way. And again, it's not a good justification to say we did it because the teachers told us. You still need to kind of build an argument of why it is like that. So talking about the ontological assumption, normally you have two choices. Assume that everything is totally positivistic or assume that something is constructivistic or interpretivist, like something is about subjectivity or objectivity. So you usually have these two extremes. But for this assignment, you need to be in the middle. You need to assume that the global mindset and the relationship with your variable is something that can be quantifiable, that's something that is material, that actually exists, that is subjective. So that is why uh, we will end up doing the survey and the quantitative part. But on the other hand, you also acknowledge that the global mindset is also subjective and it's subject of interpretation and social construction. So then that's why you also do the qualitative part. So it will be quite complex and big discussion in the research philosophy because you need to discuss all of this from the two angles. From one side, you assume it's objective what you are doing. On the other hand, you also assume it's subjective. So that's why you are navigating. You are using this mixed method approach. The good thing of doing this is that once you decide what you want to do in your dissertation, whether it is quant or qual or maybe mixed, you will be able to justify your choices. So that is basically this 3.1 section. And I think it doesn't need to be that long. Maybe one long paragraph is enough where you discuss all of these choices. What is your ontological assumption? Again, something that is objective, but also subjective. It has things from both sides. What is your epistemological assumption? How do you build knowledge that is good for this topic? So you need to build knowledge that is objective in a way. That's why we will use the survey. But you also need to build knowledge that is subjective too. So that's why we have the interviews. That's about the epistemology. Then connecting that to the methodological choices, we have quantitative and qualitative in order to kind of still touch the two extremes that we assume that exist. Your research approach in here, I think that you will be, when you do the quant part, you are being deductive because you will test. You will be like a detective testing hypotheses. And in the other hand, I think you will be either abductive or inductive. Again, these concepts are in that lecture if you don't remember them. The methodology, the next question is, why are these methodological choices relevant to your research project? You still need to justify. You need to say that the quantitative methodology that is based on a survey, data collection, and statistical analysis, it fits well with this objective aspect of the global mindset and its connection with your variable, and then claim the opposite with the interviews and the thematic analysis that you did for the qual part. So you are kind of covering everything. So make sure that you have that you justify the choices that you made, not only be transparent but also justify, well, in that sense. Then 3.2, it is about data collection. And here I have a suggestion. Maybe it can be good for you if you divide data collection into subsections. One for data collection of the quant and another one for the qual. So 3.2.1 quant, 3.2.2 qual. So here you basically need to be, again, transparent and justify your choices. So try to write enough that you show all of this. How did you collect your quantitative data? Explain, like it was through an online survey that was created, we did it all together in the classroom. It was based on previous research. In here, you need to include that text that well, I will tell you that in a second because that is very specific, but explain how we collected the data. Here it is, how we construct the survey. The survey was constructed with questions from previous research. So here is where that paragraph that you wrote at the beginning of the course in the workshop 1 is very important. Here explain with that paragraph how you measure the variables that you are using. So for your dependent variable and your independent variable, write about it. Also, write a little bit about your control variables. What are you including these controls and how do you measure them? Because you need to show how the survey is constructed. So write that about the survey. Then how did you distribute the survey? I think this discussion is much shorter than this. This discussion can be quite long because there are many variables and there are different things you need to justify, include references, all of this. And this is quite quick. We distribute the survey first. We did the piloting between ourselves, and then we distributed it with the link, and that's how we did it. Then you need to discuss a little bit about the population and the and your sample. So discuss that. What is the population you aim to target? What's the target population? So it's students in Sweden, and what is your sample? This also students in Sweden. So justify why it makes sense to do this population and sample. Then another thing is how do you ensure the validity of the survey items? And there are two things in there. First, that it was from previous research, and also that we have the Cronbach alpha. So include the Cronbach alpha number in here to ensure that everything works, that we have internal reliability of our constructs. So I guess this can be quite long because there are many things to write about how we collected the data in the survey. We have to include many references in here. So I don't know, 2 or 3 pages, I think, or I don't know, minimum one, or maybe very minimum for the quant part. And then for the qualitative data, I'm sure here Brian gave you more examples and ideas for this, but make sure that you explain how do you develop the questionnaire, and how did you conduct the interviews, how did you record them, all of these things, and justify why you did it like that, why interviews and why not focus groups or something else, why you did it like that. And once you finish with that section for quant and qual, then move to the next section, which is data analysis. And here I have a similar suggestion. Maybe you can divide 3.3.1 for quant and 3.3.2 for qual, because maybe here in data analysis, you need to explain first how you coded the results for the survey. So discuss especially the tricky variables. Like, for example, I think something tricky was the years of study, where we asked the year when the person started, but we actually coded as 2025 minus 1, because in the end, the variable represents like the tenure of the student, how many years they have been studying. So explain that one. That one is interesting to explain about coding. Also about, like, for example, the dummy variables where we collected yes or no, and then we had to code to 1 and 0. Or the gender, like we code a female for 1 and gender, and not everything that is not female 0. So discuss all of this in here in data analysis. Also explain how do we clean the data. You can explain it like we actually didn't find anything we had to remove because we did it together and we realized that the data was very good. And also explain that we use SPSS to do the analysis, that we use a linear regression analysis to do the statistical test, that we use the Spearman correlation to test the correlation matrix. So explain these kind of things in here in how we conducted the analysis. I think I think it's longer this part. There are more things to discuss about the collection. The analysis, I don't think it's that long for quant, maybe one or two paragraphs, probably, like one page. The next point is in qual, but I think again, maybe just follow the what Brian maybe told you. So discuss how you coded the transcripts and how you constructed if you end up with a data structure table, how did you find the themes relevant? What is the evidence that you have for all of this? So discuss this. I think Brian tell you more ideas about qualitative data analysis. And then we come back in 3.4 to, or maybe it's also a good idea to divide it. Maybe it's also good. Maybe you can write one paragraph where you discuss the trustworthiness aspects of quantitative research, which, if you remember, we had that lecture where we discussed internal validity, external validity, reliability, and objectivity. So take a look at the slides for these concepts and then discuss them, discuss in your text how you make sure that you have all of these aspects in your research. For example, for objectivity, I think something important for objectivity is that you are not biased when you collect the data. And I think to show that you are not biased when you collect the data, you can say again that the questions are based from previous research. In that sense, you are not coming up with new questions, which could be a bias. Another aspect, for example, for reliability, we have variable reliability with the Cronbach alpha, and we also have model reliability that we did more than one model. So our results are reliable because we are quite robust in that sense. So discuss these aspects, and the same for qualitative research. I think Brian also discussed with you trustworthiness concepts from qualitative research that you need to show in your text that you have them. I don't think you need a lot of text in here. Maybe one paragraph, two paragraphs per each is enough. So. And finally, we have ethical concerns. So try to answer to these questions in your ethical concern discussion. And maybe here you don't need to divide quant and qual because ethical concerns covers everything. So I think something extremely important about ethics is how you gain consent. In quant, it's very easy and straightforward. We ask directly, but in qual, how did you do it? Did you record it? Did you ask them to sign? How was it? Then how did you handle the data? Uh, did you handle it based on the requirements from the GDPR standards, which is like the data has to be safely stored with password, these kind of things? Also, I think in the quant it's very easy that our data is anonymous because we cannot link who answered what. That's impossible. We didn't ask, we didn't collect that. But how did you make sure that it's anonymous and people cannot identify your interviewees' responses? So discuss that in here. Again, I don't think you need to write a lot. It's probably like one or two paragraphs for ethical concerns, and that's it. So as you can see, it's quite a long chapter. I think if each section is like maybe one minimum, one page here, one page here, here two or three, here three or four, and here one at least. So it's quite long chapter, this chapter 3. So let me show you how it looks in a example of good assignment. And it's also in here, chapter 3 methodology, and it has uh, 3 point, it has kind of same structure: research philosophy, data collection, analysis, trustworthiness, ethical concerns. And if we move there to the page 10, where they wrote about methodology, they have a short research philosophy. Again, maybe something that could be improved is adding a few more references. I will also include in the group assignment page, like the key references to justify your choices and justify all of these things. In each of the lecture, you have one key paper that you can use, but I will give you more. So discuss this maybe a little bit further than they did, maybe one page. Maybe I think you probably have enough to write a page and include references. Then in data collection, I think it's all right what they wrote. And although they didn't divide into 3.2.1, actually the structure of their assignment is first the quant part and then the qualitative part. So Uh, Again, it's not, you are not forced to do anything. My suggestion is to divide it. And again, I think they also didn't write enough. I think there is much more to discuss. They didn't discuss the control variables. I think you could do that in here. They didn't discuss the um, like more aspects about how they constructed this questionnaire, I think. So maybe you can also discuss that. Data analysis, I think they discuss many things. They discuss control, well, they have the control variables in here. So maybe, I mean, like, I think when you could say that you collected control variables too, but they put it in here. This is how they code it. And then they discussed their models, how they analyzed through different models. And then they also discussed more about the interview guide and the interviews that they did. And then trustworthiness, the same thing. They discuss, I think, first the quant and then the qual. So I think you can get some idea from there how to write it. Again, observation, something to improve is that probably they need more references. And ethical concerns in the end, the same with ethical concerns that I think that you could have more references to also justify and not being only transparent. So that's it for the methodology part. Now in the next video, we will discuss findings.